people in 2022 are looking at the possibility of retiring and going, well, I don't think I can stretch my money the way I thought I was going to be able to. So current research is saying that in 2022, approximately 13% of people who thought they were going to retire have decided to postpone their retirement because of the extended increased cost of living. I've got 4 key things that I really like for people to focus on when it comes to planning for their future. Number 1 is maximizing your contributions to your retirement plan. So I keep a couple of charts with me in our office. We've got 6 offices inside our main office complex, and this first one is really important. It's our 2022 tax planning chart. Here's the first thing that's important. You need to obviously know whether or not you're single or married. So if you're filing tax-wise as a single filer, as a married filing jointly, and then find out what tax bracket specifically you fall into, because that's going to affect how much you can save and in what type of account you need to save in. So as a for instance, married filing jointly 2022, if you make between $20,551 and $83,550, you fall into the 12% bracket. But that is married filing jointly. If you're a single individual, it's $10,276 to $41,775. See, for a single individual, it is about half the amount of income to keep them in the 12% bracket. Once you've determined that, then it is key to look up the 2022 retirement planning contribution limits. Now, there's all different types of things that we can invest in for retirement. There are IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401ks, probably the most common, but there are also TSPs, 403bs, 457s. If you are self-employed, there are simple IRAs, SEP IRAs, all this gamut and spectrum of different retirement planning accounts. So a chart like this is critical because it lets you go, okay, I know what tax bracket I fall into. If you're married filing jointly, there are actually what they call phase-out limits for how much you can make and still contribute to certain types of accounts, like a Roth IRA. But it'll let you jump down here and go, okay, for 2022, I want to maximize my retirement planning contribution. I know that I can contribute $6,000 to an IRA or to a Roth IRA, unless you're above the age of 50. I hit that number this year. So now they have what's called a catch-up contribution. It's an additional $1,000. So you could put $7,000 into an IRA or a Roth IRA. Now, when you go over to something like a 401k, the contribution limit is a lot higher. So in a 401k, you come over to the chart, 2022, it's $20,500 that you could contribute to a 401k, unless you're above the age of 50. The catch-up contribution for a 401k is $6,500, which is it's more than you could contribute to a Roth as an individual. So that difference is $27,000 if you're above the age of 50. And you need something like this to keep you on pace to make sure, okay, obviously it's simple math. How much am I going to have to contribute weekly, monthly, in order to hit my annual contribution limit? And during a time like this, it is critically important to maximize those contributions to your retirement plans. We know that the cost of living is going up. Inflation is almost 10%. So we know that we're going to have to save more in order to live the type of retirement that we want to live. There's another thing with that, though, in the maximizing your contributions. Make sure that the type of accounts that you are contributing to have the right type of risk tolerance inside them. If you're nearing retirement, you don't need the same level of risk that a 40-year-old has. 60-year-old, 40-year-old needs to be a completely different level of risk. So make sure you're working with a qualified financial professional who looks at your overall portfolio and says, this is the type of account you need to be max funding, and we need to look at your risk tolerance. You know, in 2022, we've entered into a bear market. The market's been down about 20%. If you retired on December the 31st of 2021 and entered retirement, you woke up to kind of a whammy. It's like, I'm now withdrawing from my accounts and the account's going backwards. So you've got to make sure you've got your risk taken care of there, that you have a level of safety and guaranteed income inside those accounts. So maximize your contributions. The second thing is strategize with Social Security. Now, this is a much bigger deal than most people realize. It's estimated that 50% of a family's total retirement income comes from Social Security. Now, when we get to retirement, income comes from lots of places. Social Security, a pension if you're lucky, but they're rare, maybe an annuity, distributions from your 401k. but Social Security is going to be about 50% of that income. So here's the key thing with Social Security. There's more than 80 different ways for you to file if you're married filing jointly. There's over 500 different ways to file for all classes of people. So how in the world does anyone know what to file, how to file, when to file? Make sure that you have a qualified professional that you're working with who is a specialist in Social Security. We use the Baby Boomers Guide to Social Security through what's called Savvy Social Security Planning. I'm great friends with Elaine Floyd, the CFP who created this. This helps us walk through each individual situation and help them determine when should I file, how should I file. Think about this when it comes to Social Security. You can start filing at age 62, but you can delay all the way out to age 70. Well, now, why would someone want to do that? Why wouldn't everyone start at 62? Because it's about an 8% increase to your pay every year that you wait. So if you start at 62, you're good at math, another 8 years there, you're giving up 64% of potential future income. If you start at 62, you've penalized yourself. If you're married, this is why it's critically important when you file. There's all kinds of wives' tales and stories about what happens with Social Security once you get married and what you get when someone dies, and you hear a lot of bad information. We're going to talk about that later. Make sure who you're listening to is a qualified professional. So when it comes to Social Security planning when you're married, you're going to retain the higher payment. When the first person passes, whoever it is, you're going to lose the lower payment and retain the higher payment. So this is a critical planning point. Make sure that you defer, that you don't start taking the Social Security payment for the higher income earner as long as possible. If they could have started at 62, but they wait until 70, the maximum, that is a huge pay increase that's not only for them, it's going to pass on to the surviving spouse. And the average spouse lives 14.2 years after the death of the first spouse. That's your family's legacy lifetime income. It's like an annuity payment. It's a pension. So triggering income on Social Security at the right time is critically important. For anyone turning 62 in 2022, the FRA, which is called full retirement age, that's age 67. It used to be 66, but they're deferring. They're making it later before we hit our full retirement age. But if you can afford to go all the way out to age 70, it's worth it because of not only the pay increase to you, but also to the spouse that's left behind. One of you is going to continue living off the higher income earners' Social Security payment for the rest of your life, so it's a big, big deal. Maximize those Social Security payments. The third thing would be dealing with taxes in retirement, doing things called Roth conversions. There's a lot of talk about Roth conversions nowadays when people are like, what's a Roth conversion? Well, the majority of us have put our money into tax-deferred accounts. A tax-deferred account is like a 401k, any type of work plan or company plan, a 403b. Now there are options to do Roth 401ks, and there's also options to do like a Roth IRA. Why is that important? Because when you put your money into a tax-deferred account, you're reaching across the table and shaking hands with Uncle Sam saying, I agree to take a tax deduction now and pay you on the back end when I start taking the money out. But people forget that when they get to retirement. So if your money is built up in a 401k, let's say you've got $200,000 in there and you need to take $50,000 of income out. Well, you don't get to keep all $50,000. You have to pay Uncle Sam whatever he says you have to pay him for federal tax. And you have to pay the state of Missouri or whatever state you live in, whatever state tax they say. If you've put your money back into a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA, it's tax-free. There's no tax deduction up front, but all of the earnings and all the future income are tax-free. So what we're teaching people to do, if they're just now hearing about Roths and they've built up all their money in a tax-deferred account, you can do what's called a Roth conversion. And that's where you go into the tax chart that we've talked about, you look at what your income bracket is and what you can afford to do, and you convert a portion of it. Let's say there's $50,000 in an IRA. Maybe you can afford to convert $10,000 over to a Roth. Pay the tax now at today's historically low rates. And then that account's going to grow tax-free from here on out. When you take distributions in the future, you're not going to pay tax, not federal or state. There's another reason why a Roth conversion is a big deal. On any tax-deferred account, when you hit the age of 72, Uncle Sam has set a rule. It's called a required minimum distribution rule. Retirees call it RMDs. And whether you need the income or not, you must start taking distributions from tax-deferred accounts at age 72. That is taxable to your local income, to your federal income, state income tax, but it also affects your Social Security taxation. It also affects your Medicare premium. So if your money's in a Roth account, there are no RMDs required, no required minimum distributions on a Roth. So it's not only not taxable, you don't have to take the money out when Uncle Sam says you have to. So Roth conversions are a big deal. The fourth thing, and this is very important, planning for long-term care. The estimates right now are that 70% of all people will end up in some form of long-term care. It might be home health care, it might be in a nursing home. So in the Ozarks, if you are in 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week care, for instance, like staying in a nursing home, it is approximately $75,000 a year right now. That's increasing at about 8 to 10% per year. So if you're retiring right now and you end up in nursing care or full around-the-clock care 10 years from now, what's that going to cost? 100 grand, 120 grand? So you've got to have a plan for long-term care. That can either be a traditional long-term care insurance policy that helps share that cost, or it could be a specialized type of life insurance policy that has an LTC rider. That takes care of things like critical illness, chronic illness, terminal illness, heart attack, stroke, cancer, this type of thing. So some people don't want to pay for a traditional long-term care policy because if they end up not needing it, they feel like they flushed the money down the toilet. If you own a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider, you own that. It's an asset that you own, and if you don't use it for long-term care, your family's going to inherit that policy, that income, tax-free. So it's a great alternative for people. It's not the same coverage as LTC, it's similar, but that's why it's critically important to work with a qualified financial professional to see what you can afford and what might work best in your specific situation.